Welcome to Teach Me GCSE Biology,
a revision podcast for GCSE Biology students in partnership with Cardinal Newman Catholic School.
I'm Ria Corbett.
And I'm Sarah Matthews.
Hi, I'm Ria Corbett. I'm a science teacher with biology specialism, and on Teach Me GCSE Biology, I am teaching my co-host and little sister,
Sarah Matthews.
GCSE Biology, topic by topic, to hopefully provide you, our lovely listeners, with an audio revision resource.
Yes, we hope that you incorporate us into your revision and as a part of your learning journey. Dip in and out, listen to the episodes on your weaker topics, or use us as your audio biology Bible. Whatever you need us for, we are here.
Okay, so this is episode 1 of our new podcast. You probably listen to this, you won't be aware that we actually do have a separate podcast, one that we've been doing for a year, that is a revision podcast for A-level biology. So we've been at this for a little while now, and we're branching out to a GCSE one.
Yes.
In partnership with our school.
Cardinal Newman Catholic School.
That's right. Should we get started?
Let's go.
Okay. Episode 1 is on cell structure.
Great.
So we're going to cover eukaryotes and prokaryotes, the structure of animal, plant and bacteria cells. We're going to look at cell specialisms, so we'll look at specific cells and what they are specialised to do and how they are adapted to do it in terms of their differentiation. Actually, stuff that you're probably quite familiar with already.
Yep.
Okay. The difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells, what do you remember about that?
Eukaryotic is like humans.
Yeah, so animals.
Like peoples.
Okay.
And prokaryotic was like a bacteria.
Yeah, that's right. So prokaryotic cells are bacteria cells mainly.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the main difference between the two?
Cell wall.
No, because some eukaryotic...
Oh wait, no, hang on. I know the answer. One of them's got a nucleus and the other one doesn't.
That's right.
Yes.
Which way around is it?
The eukaryotic's got a nucleus.
Well done. Excellent. So eukaryotic cells, so that takes into account plant, animal, algal cells. They have a nucleus that contains the genetic material.
Mm-hmm.
So the DNA, the chromosomes, they're all contained within a membrane-bound nucleus. Whereas the prokaryotic cells, or bacteria cells, for the want of this particular course, they don't have any nucleus at all, but they still have DNA. They still have genetic material.
Yes, it just looks like a scribble.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a scribble in the pictures. It's one single DNA loop, and that is just found within the cytoplasm. And prokaryotic cells are typically much smaller than eukaryotic cells, so that would be the other main difference between them. So yeah, well remembered eventually.
Thank you.
And that is something that we have to keep in mind all the time between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. The word eukaryotic means true nucleus. The word prokaryotic means no true nucleus.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Shall we look at the diagrams of the animal and plant cells then?
Yeah.
To start having a closer look at the eukaryotic cells. So as this is our first episode, we'll explain things as we go along. We have a website which is teachmescience.co.uk, and on that website you will be able to listen to all our episodes, and you will also be able to find resources that we refer to. So I'm now referring to a diagram that has an animal, a plant and a bacteria cell on it. If you go to teachmescience.co.uk and click on the GCSE Biology tab, you will find within that page the resources, and it is a Google Drive that you can click on.
Yeah.
It's linked by episode folders,
Yeah.
and you will find the resources for that episode or whichever episode you listen to in there. Okay.
But if you do have a book, all them same pictures will be in there anyway.
Exactly. If you've got a revision guide, you don't have to go to our website. Just look at the pictures in there. Okay. As we get more into this, we know that students have revision guides by that point. We will refer to specific pages. So, animal and plant cells, let's have a look. So we're going to discuss the main organelles that we need to be aware of for this. So the organelles are the subcellular structures, or the parts of the cell that are labelled in those diagrams. Let's have a look at the key things. So we know what the nucleus is, okay? It's the largest organelle really within the animal cell, and it's a similar colour and shape within the plant cell. We know it contains genetic material. If you were asked about the function, you could say it contains genetic material or contains DNA. But what's the other thing you could say that gives you a mark in an exam for the function of the nucleus? Silence.
I don't know.
Okay, so we would always say that it controls the cell's activities. Yeah?
Okay, I was thinking something along them lines and I didn't really know how to word it.
Yeah, controls the cell. Okay, that is your go-to answer for that. And it controls the activities because it contains all the genetic material. So everything that it makes and does comes from that DNA. Right, moving on. We've got the cytoplasm. Do you remember anything about the cytoplasm, a typical function for the cytoplasm?
That's where all the other stuff lives.
That is where all the organelles are found, but you wouldn't necessarily put that in an exam. What would you say?
Sometimes reactions happen in it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well done. Excellent. So in a typical GCSE exam, if you're asked what the function of cytoplasm is, or to match a function to the cytoplasm, it would be where the cell's chemical reactions take place. Moving on, we've got the membrane. So we're moving down the diagram, and the third label is the cell membrane, okay, found in both animal and plant cells. What is its function?
It allows things to pass in and out.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Well done. And we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And then we've also got the mitochondria, okay? Do you remember, we know an awful lot about the mitochondria
Yes.
at this stage, don't
Yeah.
we? So what would a typical answer be for that?
Powerhouse.
Absolutely not. Don't you ever say that again.
Oh. Okay, that is where energy is made.
That is where energy is released
Released.
from a process called
Respiration.
respiration. Well done. So when referring to the mitochondria and its function, we would always say that it releases energy from the process called respiration. Well done. Now, what's not labelled on there is the ribosomes. But there are little circles within the cytoplasm. You can see them, they're just not labelled. So those small little dots within the cytoplasm are ribosomes. Do you remember what their job is?
The ribosomes, do they hold something?
No, they make something.
I don't know.
Protein.
Oh, okay.
So
Ribosomes
they make protein synthesis. That is everything that is common between an animal and a plant cell. So all those 5 things are in both. So we're done with the animal cell. There isn't really anything else we need to label in there. But the plant cell has 3...
Got a few extras.
Has a few extra things. So remember, plants don't move, they don't eat, they have to try and protect themselves in different ways. So they have 3 other organelles that they use for those purposes, really. We'll start off with the cell wall. So the cell wall
It's for rigidity.
is for rigidity and strength protection.
And it also means that the cell won't explode if it gets too much water in it.
Excellent, well done. We'll cover that in osmosis, but well done. So the cell wall is on the outside of the membrane, and it is extra support, extra strength, and it is made of something called cellulose. Moving on, we have got the chloroplasts.
Yeah.
So they are very important
For
for
photosynthesis.
So they absorb light for photosynthesis. They are green. They contain a pigment called chlorophyll, which is the pigment that absorbs the light. And they, as we've already said, they absorb that for photosynthesis. So the plant can make glucose as its food, basically. And then we've got, lastly, the vacuole, which, do you remember what's inside?
Got water in it?
It's got some water in it and some sugars, and that's called cell sap. So the vacuole is basically there as a place that can hold water and sugars and things like that. Okay, so it contains cell sap. That's what your go-to answer would be in an exam. All right?
Cell sap.
So again, it's important that you know what's in an animal cell, what's in a plant cell, what's common, and then what's different about them, because you could be asked directly about that. Okay. And then just a side note as well, not all plant cells have chloroplasts.
Okay.
Can you think of cells in a plant, or where cells...
In the root?
Exactly, why?
Because it's in the ground.
Exactly.
And it won't ever see the sun.
Exactly, spot on. Cells from roots don't have chloroplasts in, because it would be a waste of energy making them. There's no light to absorb. So they are passed glucose from cells that do produce it, if that makes sense. So the glucose is passed to them, so they don't have to make them. They can't make it themselves. Very good, well done. And then in comparison to that, we've got a third diagram, and that is the bacteria cell. And that is a prokaryotic cell. And we know that because it does not have a...
Nucleus.
No nucleus. You can see the chromosomes, or the genetic material, is the red bit in our diagram that we're looking at. And that is just in the cytoplasm, right there in the middle. You can see the similarities. So we can see that it has cytoplasm, it has a cell membrane, and it has a cell wall, and all those things are actually, they have the same function. There's no difference in the function, okay? And then we have a couple of extras that we need to discuss. So we've got the flagella.
They're like the legs that help it move around.
Yeah, more like tail, not necessarily legs, okay? So they act like a tail. They allow the bacteria to swim, move around. And there's also, although not labelled in this particular diagram, other pieces of DNA that are circular, and they're called plasmids. So separate to the single DNA chromosome loop that it has, it also has a number of just small little plasmid loops, which are DNA. And then there is a third thing as well. So on the outside of a cell wall of a bacteria cell, there is a slime capsule. What's the function of that?
To help it stick to other bacteria?
Yeah, so to help it stick to other bacteria, to allow it to be protected so it doesn't dry out, that sort of thing. Again, it's important to remember what's common between bacteria and eukaryotic cells. So we've got the cytoplasm, cell membrane, cell wall, and then the extras, which are our flagella, slime capsule, plasmids. So they are extra things that are in a bacteria cell that you wouldn't find in a prokaryotic cell. And in a prokaryotic cell, the cell wall is not made of cellulose. It is made of a different substance called murine.
Oh yeah, maurine, yeah.
Not maurine, murine.
Murine.
So that is the cell structure that you need to know. That is the functions of those things that you need to know. That kind of is it in terms of that, okay? We're going to move on to look at cell specialisms. So we're going to look at specialist cells. And there are specific ones named in the specification that you need to know. What they look like, how they're adapted, what their function is, that sort of thing. The animal cells that you need to be aware of are sperm cells, nerve cells, and muscle cells. So again, let's look at the resource that has just the pictures of them really that we can refer to. Again, if you'll have them in a revision guide, just look at your revision guide. Starting off with the sperm cell, okay? So it's still an animal cell, a eukaryotic cell, still has all the normal things you would expect for the basic cell structure: nucleus, cytoplasm, cell membrane. And then we have to discuss the sort of adaptations that it has. So first of all, what is the function of a sperm cell?
To meet the egg.
Right, so it has to move to find and fertilise an egg cell.
Yeah.
And it has to carry the male DNA to meet with
The female
DNA. Okay, to make an organism. So, in terms of its adaptations, its nucleus is only going to contain half the chromosome number that a normal cell would. So it's going to contain 23 of the male chromosomes, because the egg cell will have the other 23 and it will fuse. So whatever the organism's full chromosome number is normally, sperm cells will only contain half the number. A sperm cell contains a very, very, very high number of mitochondria in its middle section. Can we discuss that? Why that would be?
For energy.
For energy for what?
The sperm to move.
Right. So the sperm has got a long way to go in terms of its size, okay? It's got to swim up through the uterus, into the fallopian tube, and then find the egg. It's got to try and get through quite a lot of obstacles as well on its way sometimes. So it needs a lot of energy, and it has a massive burst of energy in its, first day or two of life, and then it pretty much will fizzle out from there. But it will really be releasing a lot of energy to get as far as it can and hopefully reach a fertilised egg. Loads and loads of mitochondria to release loads and loads of energy to give it that energy to swim and move and find the egg. If we look at its shape, and it's got some obvious features there, hasn't it? Like
Tail
to allow it to move. What else?
A nucleus head.
Nucleus head. But if you look at the head itself, and the shape of the head, it's very streamlined.
Yeah.
So that allows it to move as quickly as it can through whatever fluid it's in, okay? Now, can you see in the very tip, just above the nucleus, in the very tip head of the sperm, there is something called an acrosome?
Yeah.
So within that acrosome is two things. Digestive enzymes that, when released, would help to break down the egg membrane.
Yeah.
and also a very small sharp needle that helps to dig its way in. So it has like a little structure which helps it to sort of make its way through the membrane of the egg cell that it's trying to fertilise. So that helps it to do its job, which is to fuse and fertilise the egg cell. And that is sort of it really in terms of the adaptations that allow it to be the best possible cell to fertilise an egg. So let's move on to the nerve cell. Okay, what's the function of nerve cells?
To feel things, like pain.
How does a nerve allow you to feel pain?
Receptor.
So they lead off from receptors. Good. What's the part of the neuron or the nerve cell within any kind of response that you have to pain or anything like that? What passes along the nerve cell?
I don't know.
Okay, so it's an electrical impulse. When a stimulus, so something in your environment changes, it's detected by a receptor somewhere in your body, and then an electrical impulse will pass along the nerves to your brain or your spinal cord. Basically, the job of the nerve cell is to pass messages from one part of the body to another, and it has to do that very quickly. So it helps that the nerve cell is long, so very long, and that allows it to obviously go long distances throughout your body. And it's also branched. So can you see the dendrites in the head?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are allowing that nerve cell to make connections with other nerve cells so that they can form a network of nerves to pass messages as fast as possible to where they need to be. And that's really it. But again, it's still got a cell membrane, still got a nucleus, still got a cytoplasm.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a bit different from a typical animal cell because it's got a very special job to do. And then the final animal cell that we need to discuss is the muscle cells. Now, what's the job of a muscle cell?
To help you move.
To help you move. And to allow you to move, they contract. So they lengthen and then they shorten, and then they lengthen and then they shorten. And if lots of cells do that together, the whole tissue will do that. You can move a limb or whatever it is you want to move. So it helps that the muscle cells are quite long because it gives them room to contract and shorten again and stuff like that. Okay? And they're made of muscle fibres, again, which allow the contraction to take place. I'm sure you could think of the one good adaptation that something has that needs to move. Lots and lots of
energy
producing
mitochondria,
or energy releasing mitochondria. I'll just put that in there. Obviously muscle cells would have a lot of mitochondria because they need a lot of energy for contractions. Okay, that is really the animal cells that need to be covered from the specification. It doesn't mean that it's not the only specialised cells that you could look at. It's always good to get a wider picture, and you can look at things like white blood cells, red blood cells, look those things up, look at the adaptations, any other important cells, egg cells even, rod and cone cells from the eye. If you want to, look into it and research those, because you never know what they might ask you. They'd give you all the information you needed. You just have to apply it. We've also got a couple of plant cells that are specialised that we need to look at. And we're going to look first at the root hair cell. So that's the one that's surrounded by the soil and not a tube. Okay. What's the job of a root hair cell, Sarah, in a plant?
To absorb water.
Yes. So its job is to absorb water out of the soil and minerals. So the root itself would have lots and lots of those hairs sticking out into the soil, and it gives it a larger surface area for absorption. So it's not just the root membrane, it's also got all this extra membrane, which is the hairs. Large surface area. It's also got quite a large vacuole, and that speeds up the water movement, and a very thin membrane and wall to allow for that shorter pathway of the water to get into the cell. Pretty important for a plant, that. And then we've got the phloem and xylem. So xylem and phloem are the tubes within a cell. One of them carries water and one of them carries sugars. Which one carries the water?
The xylem.
The xylem, well done. And the phloem transports sugars around the plant. They start out as actually quite normal cells, and slowly as they become more specialised, all of their cell walls and membrane and most of their organelles, they just disintegrate and disappear so that they can form tube structures. And then they've got as much room as possible to transport what they need to transport within. And in fact, xylem They start off alive, but then they die over time. And the cell wall and part of the tubing of it fills with this substance called lignin, which is a really strong, supportive substance, and that just basically forms a hollow tube, and that's what a xylem is in the end. So it starts off as cells just on top of each other in a tube structure, and then it all falls out, all the membrane, everything, it all goes. No cytoplasm, no nothing, and then the lignin just fills in the gaps and supports it, and it just becomes a tube for water transport. Phloem is alive, but doesn't fill with lignin or anything like that. It does have a lot less organelles and a little bit of cytoplasm, and that's about it. And a couple of organelles, but it doesn't have an awful lot, just so that it's got room for the sugars to move up and down. What we would call that then, so cells that start off as being unspecialised, and then they start to adapt and develop into specialised cells, we call that differentiation. So when a cell differentiates, it becomes a special type of cell, like the ones we've discussed. And that is all of the new material that we are covering today. What we typically do now, once we've covered the actual content, is we cover some exam questions. So each week I will find 3 or 4 exam questions that I will read out to Sarah and that she has to answer. Starting off with the 1 marker. 1A. What is the function of the nucleus? 1 mark.
It holds all of the genetic material and it controls the cell.
Well done. So it controls the activities of the cell, and then also you could say it contains genetic material. Well done. 1B. Name 1 type of cell that does not contain a nucleus. 1 mark.
A bacteria.
Well done. Yeah. So you could say bacteria cell, you could say prokaryote, and then you could also say xylem cell, because they don't have nucleuses after, when they're specialised and they become xylem. There's no nucleus. And then if you have looked up red blood cell, you'd know they don't have a nucleus, so that they can carry as much oxygen as possible. So that would also be a answer that could get you 1 mark. 1C. Name 1 structure found in a plant cell but not found in an animal cell. 1 mark.
Cell wall.
Well done. And then you could also get a mark for
chloroplast
and
vacuole.
Vacuole. Well done. So that is one of those things for 1 mark. Question 2. Root hair cells take up water from the soil. Explain 1 way in which the root hair cell is adapted to this function. 2 marks.
It's got a larger vacuole.
What's that for?
To absorb more, to take more water on and minerals on.
So it's for faster water movement more than it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's got long root hairs.
Well, it is a root hair. So it is a root hair. That's what it is. It's one of the hairs.
And it's for more surface area?
Larger surface area. Well done. So larger surface area for more water absorption or faster osmosis. We'll cover osmosis in a later episode. And then you could also get a mark for saying thin walls.
Okay, thin cell membrane.
Thin cell membrane, shorter diffusion distance. Water's got less to get through to get to where it needs to be, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then question 3. Describe how the long tail and the mitochondria help sperm to do its job. And this is 4 marks.
So the mitochondria has got lots of energy. It can keep going for a long time. The tail helps it to swim fast.
The long tail allows the sperm to swim towards the egg. And then the mitochondria is what allows it to get the energy. So you've got to mention mitochondria.
It's got to release energy.
To release energy. Well done.
Yeah.
From the process called
respiration.
So long tail allows it to move and swim towards the egg. The mitochondria releases energy in respiration. Well done. What we typically do now in our episodes, and what we will do from now on, is I will read out all of the information that you need to know in a roundup, and we call it Ria's Roundup. Animal, plant and algal cells are all eukaryotic cells. This means the genetic material is contained within a membrane-bound organelle called a nucleus. This controls the activities of the cell. These cells also contain a cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes and mitochondria. The cell membrane is important for allowing substances in and out of the cell. The cytoplasm is where chemical reactions take place. Ribosomes are for protein synthesis, and the mitochondria release energy for the cell from a process called respiration. Plant cells also contain a cell wall, a vacuole and chloroplasts. The cell wall is made of cellulose, provides strength to the cell. The vacuole contains cell sap, and the chloroplasts allow the cells to trap light energy for photosynthesis. However, not all cells in a plant contain chloroplasts, only those above the ground. Cells in the root do not contain them, as there is no light underground. Bacteria cells are prokaryotic cells, which means the genetic material is not contained within a nucleus, but is found within the cytoplasm. The genetic material is a single loop of DNA, and there are also smaller loops of DNA called plasmids, also found within the cytoplasm. Bacteria cells also contain ribosomes, although they are smaller, a cell wall, although it is made of murine and not cellulose, and a cell membrane. Bacteria cells contain a slime capsule, which is found outside the cell wall and is useful to protect the cells, stops them from drying out, and allows them to stick together. They also have flagellum, which allows them to move. These basic cell structures can differentiate and become specialised to carry out specific roles in an organism. They will develop adaptations to allow them to carry out their specialised roles. Sperm cells have a very special streamlined shape with a tail to allow them to move towards and fertilise an egg, joining the male DNA with the female DNA. They contain many mitochondria to ensure they can release lots of energy to allow them to travel to the egg. In the head of the sperm cell there is an acrosome containing digestive enzymes, which help to break down the egg membrane. Nerve cells carry electrical impulses from one part of the body to another to allow us to respond to our environment. They are long and contain many dendrites to make connections with other nerve cells to form a network. Muscle cells contract to allow movement. They are long and made up of protein fibres that can contract individually. When each cell contracts, the whole muscle tissue can allow movement. To allow lots of energy for these contractions, the cells contain many mitochondria. Root hair cells are specialised plant cells that project from a plant root into the soil. They are like small hairs. They provide a large surface area for the absorption of water and minerals. They also contain a large vacuole to ensure the absorption is fast and many mitochondria to provide energy for the active transport of minerals. Phloem and xylem cells are for transport of sugars and water, respectively, throughout the plant. They form tubes that contain very few organelles, so there is room for the transported substances. The next section of our episode is where Sarah gives us 3 takeaways from the episode. So, Sarah, got any takeaways?
Yeah, we have eukaryotic and prokaryotic. Eukaryotic are animal cells and human beings and things like that. And prokaryotics are things like bacteria. And some specialised cells are the sperm, root hair cell, a nerve cell.
Okay.
If a cell goes from just being a normal cell into a specialised cell, that's called differentiation.
Yeah, well done. Thinking back to your takeaways, what is the main difference between a eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells?
The nucleus.
Well done. What about
Sorry,
it?
was that something you wanted me to just...
What about it?
The eukaryotic's got it.
Yeah.
The prokaryotic just has not got it.
Exactly. And then can you just tell me one adaptation of any of the specialised cells we talked about?
Yeah, nerve one is really long. So
Yeah,
it can, and it's got little things that come out that can meet with the other nerves.
Well done. Dendrites. Yeah. Good. Excellent. That will always then mark the end of the episode. So
If you would like to contact us, I do have it written down on my notes.
Oh,
on my
well
phone this
done.
time.
check you
Because
out.
the confusion will lie when I have to then do the contacting us for the A-level one. And it's going to fall apart. So if you'd like to contact us, you can drop us an email. That is teachmegcsescience@gmail.com. Remember, we've also got our website. That is teachmescience.co.uk. Find us on Twitter. That is at teachmegcsesci, so SCI, at teachmegcsesci. And on Instagram, we are at teachmegcsesci
Usually what we ask for is if you have an amazing piece of revision that you have done at school or at home and you want to send us a picture of that, we will put it onto our social media and we will show other people how to produce and what to produce in terms of what's good revision. If you have any questions about the episode you've listened to, any to further any points, just drop us an email. We'll reply to you, or a message on any of those contact points, and we will message you back. If you want to discuss anything at all, so with our A-Level 1, people get in touch with us from just about everywhere. You know, they say
all over the world
why they're listening to us, what course it is specifically that they're doing. Because what we found is that even though we do an A-Level biology podcast,
a lot of our listeners aren't doing A-Level biology.
A lot of the listeners are not doing A-Level biology. They're doing similar courses in different countries, and they get in touch to tell us that, basically. So you want to speak to us, you get in touch. We're here for you.
Was that the bell?
Yeah, that was the bell. What you got next?
I've got resistant materials.
Oh my God, resistant materials. Oh, hey, now come on. All the equipment you've got there up there in that tech block.
Yeah.
Laser cutters.
Yeah.
3D printers. Seriously.
Ooh.
Jinx.
Saws. Like screwdrivers. All that stuff.
Oh,
just
mate,
up
I mean,
there.
just...
Glue guns.
It's all going on.
Yeah, well, I better go because actually I've only got a few minutes to get there. If I get a late mark, then I've got a DT after school, so I've got to go.
You better go.
Yeah.
Right, see you later.
See ya. This has been Teach Me GCSE Biology. My name is Sarah Matthews.
And I'm Ria Corbett.
And we will. You'll hear us next time.
Bye.
Bye.